Welcome to another episode of Stories from the Edge of Life. We have two very special guests today. Uh, we'll start off with ladies first. So, Andrea.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Andrea Martinez de la Vega. I'm a palliative care physician from Mexico City, and I'm really glad to be here again in this channel. Thanks for the invite.
Great. And then we have Dr. Nathan Punwani. Welcome, Dr. Punwani.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm a physician at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. I'm a hematologist oncologist, and my focus is leukemias, lymphomas, blood cancers, and how to treat them, including bone marrow transplantation and cellular therapy.
Sounds very sophisticated, which it is. And I'm Parag Bharadwaj. I'm a hospice and palliative medicine physician in the US. So thank you for your time today. Basically, what I wanted to discuss with both of you was, number one, from a medical perspective, how medicine keeps on pushing the edge. The name of our channel is Stories from the Edge of Life, but medicine is really advancing so fast these days. It is really pushing the edge, and would like to highlight a specific patient, a teenager, a 13-year-old girl who was diagnosed with leukemia, which is a kind of a, in layman's term, a blood cancer. And she underwent chemotherapy, she underwent cutting-edge bone marrow transplant, and she did not respond to the treatments. And then she went through a very novel therapy, which is fairly new, and so far from what we know has cured the patient. So not my expertise. Dr. Punwani, could you really explain to us what was done for this patient, and perhaps give us some of the historical perspective of this particular approach?
Yeah, so when a blood cancer like a leukemia or a lymphoma is very high risk of coming back after an initial line of therapy called an induction line of chemotherapy, most of the time we fast track patients to bone marrow transplantation. And the idea is we give them a different immune system from somebody else, ideally somebody who's younger, healthier, and doesn't have cancer, and then use that immune system, transfuse their stem cells into the patient, so the patient gets a new immune system to reduce the risk of the cancer, the blood cancer coming back. So that's in a nutshell of how bone marrow transplant works. But then there's some leukemias that just keep on coming back. Many times they come back so fast that you can't even take patients to transplant. And then many times they relapse even after bone marrow transplant. Roughly a third of patients will relapse even after having bone marrow transplant. So as a result, there's a dearth of additional therapies that you can do when it comes to getting patients back into remission. So one of the new cutting edge therapies that's been on the forefront in the last 10 years, and since then the FDA has approved at least 6 different products, is cellular therapy. And you can think of cellular therapy as really using immune cells to fight the cancer, and only using those immune cells. So not any precursor cells like any stem cells, but directly obtain immune cells from the patient who's suffering from cancer. These are called T cells, kind of immune cell. But at the end of the day, we genetically engineer them so they recognize the cancer, so they have a receptor that is respective to a particular protein on the cancer, so they can hook up with each other, and then the genetically engineered immune cell kills off the cancer, kills off the leukemia. And that's what this patient got, was something called CAR T-cell therapy, chimeric antigen receptor therapy. And you can think of it as really the atom bomb of immunotherapy, of using immune cells and using the immune system to fight off a cancer. I like to say that this is like the 6th pillar of cancer treatment. So the first pillar was surgery, and this goes back to even the times of the ancient Egyptians. Second pillar was chemotherapy. So basically giving poison really, but this is a poison that is selective and ideally targets out fast growing cells like a cancer, sparing the rest of the body as much as you can. And then the third pillar of treatment, the third mainstay of treatment was radiation. And now, since then, we've had targeted therapies that focus on targeting the cancer without killing the rest of the body. And then the fifth pillar is going to be kind of this CAR T cell therapy, or just immunotherapies in general, of which CAR T is a expansive therapeutic armamentarium for cancer treatment.
Sounds very exciting. So as a hematologist, oncologist, how do you feel in terms of this particular advancement?
I mean, it's very rewarding. I mean, I think, long ago, many of these patients, after a couple lines of chemotherapy, if the cancer came back, at that point, you would have to, at that point, de-escalate therapy and then fast track them to, palliative care or to hospice. And there was nothing else to offer. But now we're not only just getting remissions, but we're actually achieving potentially cure of cancer, especially the very chemo-resistant cancers. I can tell you for myeloma, typically after the third line, progression-free survival gets into the months, usually 3 to 6 months when you do therapies after a third line. But now, thanks to CAR T cell therapy, one of the products is called Carvykti. Now, after 2 years of following up patients, more than half of them are alive and myeloma free. So we still need some longer term follow-up data, but you're starting to see already the progression-free survival curves stabilize, which means after about 2 to 3 years, if the myeloma hasn't come back, if that blood cancer hasn't come back, odds are patients are statistically cured. So these are, very Herculean advancements that we've made just in the last 10 years, and it's been a very exciting time. And I'm hoping more and more leukemias can become susceptible to this approach, which I think would be, over time can help maybe put chemotherapy in the dustbin of treatment options.
Yeah, you stole my thunder. I was going to ask you if you foresee this being the first line of treatment in the future.
I don't think first line. I think there's talk of second line.
Right.
I think ultimately cost is going to play an issue. One of the things is these therapies typically cost at least $450,000 US. So it's important to really reserve this for as kind of later line therapies rather than first line therapies. I think you're going to bankrupt a country if everyone started getting this first line. We are seeing chemo gradually getting displaced in many cases, favoring more targeted therapies. So these are therapies that think of them as precision bombs, precision missiles. They really precisely kill the cancer cell. Maybe there's a protein on the cancer, and this is a drug that targets that particular protein on the leukemia or inside the leukemia, and preventing it from growing and targeting it selectively with minimal collateral damage, in this case, minimal side effects or less effects on the rest of the body. So patients don't get totally wrecked by chemotherapy. They get more of a targeted approach. So I think we're starting to see that move into first line, but CAR T is going to probably be more at the earliest, maybe second line. In myeloma, you have to typically fail 3 lines of therapy, or at least 3 drug classes before proceeding towards CAR T therapy. And then in adult leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, it's a 3rd line. So, I think lymphoma, the case is being made to do it maybe second line, but definitely not first.
Yeah, I just brought it from a point of view, even from when you look at the cost, I was hoping that over time things tend to get cheaper, right? So you never know.
Yeah.
I
I doubt it, because I think this is, it takes a while so that's the other reason why I doubt it can be first line, because of timing is everything. So it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to genetically engineer immune cells. So to kind of freeze or dialyze out a patient's immune cells, genetically engineer them, So the cells now express a receptor that targets the leukemia and can hook up with the leukemia. That takes 4 to 6 weeks. So many patients, when they're first diagnosed, especially if it's a first onset of a lymphoma or leukemia, you don't have the luxury of waiting 4 to 6 weeks for the cells to come in. So I think even just logistically speaking, I think it's not feasible. And then you have the cost component to it. And then there's also side effects as well. So, many of the problems with the CAR T cell therapy is that during the first couple of months, maybe 3 months, they tend to have a lot of complications.
Yeah, and I think that's well put, because the devil is always in the details, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we always look, we get to hear just a superficial aspect of what's going on. But even with this particular patient, she did have a long hospitalization, and was at risk for infections. So yeah, it's usually not as easy as it sounds. And to your point, there is going to be a phase during the treatment where the patient could have a lot of side effects, and that's where I think palliative care could come in to ensure the patient's comfort. So I'm going to switch gears and ask Andrea, what do you think? It sounds like something very different than what we've been used to hearing, right, over the years.
Yeah, that's really, really a different perspective, but I think it's a new hope for patients, because in the end, we're all going to be dead sooner or later, but giving the patients the hope to live an extra time to enjoy their families, I think they should take it, even though I don't know exactly what are the consequences and besides the costs, what symptoms can a patient actually have, because actually we could be working as palliative care physicians a long way, with the treatment, so the patient understands that he might have a little bit of symptoms, that he might have the need to be isolated and everything. So it copes better. The patient copes better with the transition of the treatment. So I think we could work actually together in getting better results from the patients, and not only leading us to the end of life, that most doctors usually do that, but we can actually help throughout the process. And I think that would be really awesome for the patient, because it wouldn't be that burden for them. I don't know. Burden. That's the word I was looking for.
Perfect. Yeah, because I can tell you, I started working full time in 2005. And at that time, certain cancers, when you took care of certain diagnoses, if it was a stage 4 cancer, you knew the prognosis was very poor. I actually know many cancer patients right now who are stage 4, but they're in remission. We actually had one of them get interviewed on this channel. So things are definitely moving in a very different direction in terms of the advancements being made in medicine. And that's why I titled this particular session as, medicine is really pushing the edge. And I think one thing that is common in pursuing all these treatments is, I think medicine and scientists in general are not satisfied with the status quo, right? So I'm sure when bone marrow transplants were started, it was seen as a revolutionary treatment, right? And now you have the immunotherapies, and now you have this base slicing. So what else is cooking, Dr. Punwani? Anything else that is on the horizon for cancer treatments?
Oh, I mean, I think that's really kind of like I mentioned, kind of the fifth pillar has been, some kind of immunotherapy, whether it's checkpoint inhibitors or CAR T cell therapy. The idea is using the immune system to fight back against the cancer. So I think that, and then of course, targeted therapies, which is I would call the fourth pillar. And one of the things with targeted therapies is there's hundreds of targets, because as long as the physiology of cancer is so complicated and nuanced and interconnected, there's many different avenues to go after the cancer and to get it into remission and hopefully cure for a lot of patients. So, I think that's, stay tuned, but it's going to be more and more targeted therapies, more and more immunotherapies. And I think the the zeitgeist of the time is that gradually chemotherapy is going to go into the back burner, or it's going to be used more as an emergent last ditch effort, or kind of when patients are maybe first diagnosed, they're very, very ill. So you need to induce a remission fast. That's when you're going to use chemotherapy, but otherwise we're going to be doing more and more of these targeted therapies and immunotherapies. And then of course radiation for palliative purposes, especially kind of in my field of blood cancers. Surgery, not so much as in my field, but for other types of cancers like colon cancer, breast cancer, surgery is very integral to the management.
And how all that you described, how many years do you think that's going to take where chemotherapy might be sort of not mainstream?
Probably, I think 15 years. I think at the end of the day, you need long enough follow-up data to show. So, say, you get chemotherapy or you get some kind of treatment here and then, over time, you expect patients to relapse after the initial administration of chemo. And so when you follow them up, you'll see there's a curve, and ideally that curve flatlines, telling you at some point in time, maybe it's 2 years, 3 years out, because there's this plateau, there's no further relapses happening, then you can prove statistically these patients are getting cured. So I think in order to prove a survival benefit from chemotherapy versus a new therapy, you need long enough follow-up data to show that the curves have substantially diverged.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it'll be more, at least a decade.
Yeah, and we're talking about things in the US. Andrea works in Mexico. Things are a little bit different. I went to med school in India. That's a completely different, environment as well. So I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be these new innovations are going to be seeping in different communities at different rates because of various confounding issues. But Andrea, it sounds really great, right? So within our lifetime, we might be witnessing a point in time where chemotherapy might be almost obsolete.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Dr. Punwani is estimating a decade in the US. I'm estimating 5 times that time here in Mexico. We have that much delay in some aspects, even though we have the research and we have the reading and everything, we don't have the resources. And economically, it's, as you said, it's the costs are high as hell, but I'm really thrilled that we can actually have this other option for patients and actually work together with palliative care so that they can also plan ahead of what's coming. It's like we're starting this treatment, it's new, we have a lot of things to know about, and that extra support, I think it's going to be like a boom, like it's going to go all the way to the sky, that you can have both aspects of medicine. And I wish we could have that here in Mexico in not that much time. It would be great.
Yeah, but it's just amazing how things change in our field, right? I remember when I was training, our teachers are tending to say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, this thing was introduced and it revolutionized the way they thought. Now, as we are, going through our own experiences in medicine, now I've started the same, sounding like my attendings, right? Saying, oh, 10, 15 years ago, this is what we used to do. So medicine is actually just progressing at a very fast pace. And new medications, new innovations, new understanding of diseases. And I think it's really pushing things in terms of improving the longevity of patients. And then, of course, Andrea, you and I, we also focus on the quality of life, right? It's not just the quantity, but quality. So, yeah, I think we will talk a lot more about other innovations, not only just in cancer, but in other fields as well. But before we wind up, I just want to get any final thoughts from you, Andrea, and then from Dr. Punwani.
I only wish that humanity would go as fast as technology and in medical improvements, because I think as humans, we're far behind from being human beings. We sometimes forget that this is the most essential part of someone actually being alive, not the time given, but the quality of time given. And if we can make an impact in both, I think that's a line to start, you know.
Very well said. Dr. Punwani?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a time like no other. And in some ways, it's a very exciting time. I think one of the things, I think a take home message I want people to understand is that cancer is not a monolithic entity. So there's so many different kinds of cancers, each with a different, risk, each with a different tax on quality of life, and each with a, different, treatment options, some more limited than others. So my hope is that over time, more and more cancers, there's an ever expanding therapeutic armamentarium against each one of them. I think, unfortunately, we have some we made enormous strides in some cancers, especially like my field, leukemia or myeloma, another kind of blood cancer. I think even breast cancer, lung cancer, kidney cancer, but in other fields like brain tumors, we actually have made little progress since kind of the 2000s. So I think it's very important that people understand that what one patient might get for their cancer is not something that you can replicate in other cancers. And my hope is that that day ends and everybody has multiple options for each and every type of malignancy out there. But I think it's important to kind of moderate that hubris that we have, that we can conquer every kind of disease.
Yeah, definitely a very exciting time. And I feel we are in such a special place in history, right? Where we can actually get to witness all the innovations and progress being made. So we will definitely continue our conversation as we hear of more and more innovations coming our way, not only just for the cancer patients, but also patients with other diagnoses. And so we hope to have you back, Dr. Punwani, in the near future, and get to learn a little bit more about what you do in more detail.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
All right, and thanks, and thank you, Andrea.
Thank you to you both. It's been a pleasure to meet you, Nathan, and see what the tip of the iceberg right now in your field. And it's really interesting, and I'm really, really excited to be part of it. And thanks for sharing,
Yeah, and hopefully the iceberg doesn't melt too quickly.
Let's hope so.
Great.